Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining this evening. Today's workshop is on Municipal Elections 101, and it's going to be presented by Election Services from the City of Toronto. We'll open this event with a land acknowledgement, but before I pass it over to Jarek Nguyen, I'd like to note that this evening is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. We also are lucky enough to have ASL interpreters joining us today, and they will be visible throughout the presentation and during the question and answer period. We ask that you keep your microphones on mute during the presentation to prevent any background noise. I'm going to turn it over to Jarek now, who will share the Social to Planning Toronto land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone. So Social Planning Toronto works with diverse communities and neighborhoods across the geography of Toronto, also known as the Coranto. SPT honors that land that we are on and the current stewards of this land, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We acknowledge the historical relationship between the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy who have lived in this territory. Toronto is also home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including Inuit peoples and the Métis Nation. The 6 boroughs of Toronto are covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. Many of us, such as myself, a racialized son of immigrant parents from colonized lands, have come here as settlers, immigrants, or refugees in this generation or in generations past, while some have come here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Living in this territory, we all have treaty rights and responsibilities and a role to play in upholding the original commitments under which treaties were signed. This land is also part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee to peacefully share and care for the land, water, and resources. Other Indigenous nations and all settlers, including each of us, are invited into this agreement in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. This Friday, September 30th, is Canada's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. This day honors the children who never returned home, survivors of the residential schools, as well as their family and communities. On this day, it is important to recognize the resilience, dignity, and strength of all of those who have experienced this and remember those who did not make it out of it. SPT is working towards centering, building, trusting relationships, and supporting actions for which Indigenous communities and Indigenous organizations have been advocating for. This includes adapting our work, processes, and policies to align with and amplify the Truth and Reconciliation Committee's calls to action and to continuously learn from Indigenous wisdom, truths, and ways of knowing. This land acknowledgement will be adapted over time to reflect our continuous learning and commitments.
Thank you so much, Jarek, for sharing your thoughts on a particularly important week for reflecting about our relationship to the land. So I'd like to share with you, that this workshop is part of a series geared towards community development workers and grassroots leaders who are engaged in voter and election engagement activities for the upcoming municipal election. We have 3 more events planned this week that I encourage you to attend. Tomorrow's is on the voter pop-up with the Democratic Engagement Exchange, and we have 2 issue-based events happening on Wednesday and Thursday on some key municipal issues such as climate action, housing, poverty, food security, as well as harm reduction, shelters, and alternatives to policing. So Social Planning Toronto has also created a number of different resources to support voter engagement that I'd like to tell you about. So we have a voter engagement grants for residents and grassroots groups. The deadline is this Friday, so it's a $500 grant that is intended for residents and small local grassroots-led groups that are doing voter engagement in nonpartisan activities in your community. So it's $500 towards any kind of expenses that you might have in doing those voter engagement events or initiatives in your community. We also have an election readiness toolkit and a speaker roster. So if you're hosting an event and need a speaker to come in and talk about municipal issues such as housing or transit, we have a whole speaker roster available to you of experts in those areas, as well as a toolkit that talks about how to engage a discussion around the municipal election, links to and information about getting ready to vote, and an election tool. An election readiness toolkit. We also are developing a number of fact sheets that will be translated into a number of languages on our website. And we also have a vote pledge. One of the most important things during this election is to make sure that we do go out and vote. It is our chance to exercise our democratic rights, and so we have a vote pledge. And if you sign up on our website, we encourage you to share this pledge, sign up on our website, and share it with your friends and families to encourage them also to vote and to bring 2 friends out to vote. The more we can get people voting, the more we can get people engaged, and that's how we have our say in our municipal election process. We also on our website have links to advocacy campaigns and pledges. So if you want to know more about, say, housing or transit or climate action, we have some links to some partner advocacy campaigns that are happening right now. And then we also have a panel election series coming up in October. It's called "What Does Toronto Need for a Just and Equitable Recovery? Bold Ideas for Change." And those will be on October 12th and 19th. So I encourage you to go to our website to access these resources and learn more. I'll share our link in the chat to all of these, where you can see the links to all of these resources and information. So tonight, I'd like to introduce our presenter for this evening. We have Alex Lomax, who works in the city clerk's office in election services. Alex has a presentation that will be shared on the screen. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to include them in the chat, and we will make sure that Alex gets a chance to answer them. Please go ahead, Alex.
Great, thank you very much. So welcome to Elections 101. You can find a version of this presentation and a lot more information on our website, which is toronto.ca/elections. I will be referencing the website a lot during this presentation, so it's definitely worth going there. It's got some great resources and tools on there for you to use. Okay, next slide, please. The presentation will help guide you through Elections 101 and its 3 pillars, which are learn, vote, and participate. What you should expect to learn during the Elections 101 presentation is what the different levels of government are, roles of the mayor and council, and how the municipal election is administered, and their guiding principles, voting rules and what you're voting for, and finally, how you can participate in local municipal elections in Toronto. Next slide, please. Learn. In this section, you will learn about the levels of government, roles and responsibilities of the mayor and councillors, and the Toronto City Clerk. Next slide, please. It's important to know the different levels of government in Canada. There are 3 levels of government and 3 different elections. So the City of Toronto is your municipal level of government. That's the one that we'll be voting for in this election. The last election that we had back in June was a provincial election, and the one which I believe was last year, that was a federal election. So we've had a lot of elections, one after the other recently, but these are the municipal elections that are coming up. Next slide, please. City Council is made up of 26 members, the mayor, who is elected citywide, and 25 councillors who are elected in each ward across the city. The mayor and councillors each have 1 vote at council, and a majority vote decides most matters. The mayor and councillors are not elected to represent a political party. Each member of council is independent and can choose how they vote on any issue. That is something very important to note when you're talking to people about elections, is that they will not be looking at an elected a party on their ballot paper when they receive it. It will just be names of people. So people really need to do their research when it comes to candidates that will be standing in their area. Okay, next slide, please. So here is a map of the 25 wards in the City of Toronto and their corresponding names and number. So this is just to give you an idea of how large spread the election of the City of Toronto is. We are the 4th largest election in North America, the only 3 larger being New York City, Los Angeles, and Mexico City. So it is a big undertaking to get everybody to vote across from Etobicoke across the Scarborough. We have 25 wards in the city. Okay, next slide, please. Mayor roles and responsibilities. The mayor has a wide range of responsibilities, and some of these include to provide leadership to City Council, represent Toronto across Canada and around the world, work with different levels of government, chair the executive committee, and appoint councillors to chair the standing committees of City Council. Next slide, please. Councillors' roles and responsibilities are similar, but a little bit more on the ground. So councillors talk to residents, businesses, and community groups about city programs and access to city services. They attend city council and committee meetings. They sit on boards of city agencies and corporations. They propose changes to the decisions city council makes, introduce motions to propose action or raise awareness of issues, hold or attend community meetings to get input from the public, and host or get involved in community events. So the councillor is really your first port of call when you have a local issue. The first person you should go to is your councillor. They will be able to help you with it. So it's very important to know that the councillor is the one who should be kind of engaging with the community at the first level. Next slide, please. School board trustee. So school board trustees are not officers of the city. Toronto Elections administers the school board trustee elections on behalf of the 4 school boards, which are English Public, English Catholic, French Public, and French Catholic. You can find more information from the Ministry of Education website. The reason we say that is just because we don't have anything to do with obviously how the board works and that type of thing. We purely do the elections. So when you go into the polling station, you will see 3 different lists of people. That's the councillor, the mayor, and the school board trustee. So that's one to bear in mind. A lot of people are kind of taken aback when they see the school board trustee there on their ballot paper. Okay, next slide, please. So the city clerk. The city clerk is the person that I work for under many, many layers. So the city clerk is responsible for the administration of municipal elections in the city of Toronto, which, as I said, is the 4th largest city in North America. And we have over 1.8 million eligible electors with 1,500 voting locations, and we hire over 15,000 people to work in the voting places. In 2018, voter turnout was 54.67%, which is the highest turnout for large cities in Canada. The city clerk is an officer of the city, and their duties are outlined in the provincial legislation and delegated by council. Council appoints the clerk, who reports to council for statutory responsibilities and to the city manager for administrative purposes. The city clerk's responsibilities include to elect government, which is to ensure election readiness and manage election operations, to make government work, which is to manage government decision-making processes, support elected and accountability officials, provide ceremonial and official event services, and deliver provincially delegated services, to promote open government, which is to lead corporate information management, enable corporate informational stewardship, and deliver information production services. Okay, so now on to the second section, vote. The next section in this presentation is vote. In this section, you will learn the basics of voting in the City of Toronto. According to legislation, during a general municipal election, election day is always the 4th Monday in October. So this year we'll be voting on October 24th. Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to talk about who can vote. You are eligible to vote in the City of Toronto municipal election if you meet all of the following requirements. You are a Canadian citizen, you are at least 18 years old, you are not prohibited from voting under any law, and you qualify to vote. And there are 3 ways you can qualify to vote in Toronto municipal election. The first is as a resident elector. So this is if you live in the City of Toronto. Being a resident elector is the most common type of eligibility. Second is a non-resident elector. So this is if you own or rent property in Toronto, but it's not where you live. And the third is as the spouse of a non-resident elector. This is if your spouse owns or rents property in Toronto, but it's not where you live. So those are the three ways you can qualify to vote. So who are you voting for? When you go to vote during a municipal election in the City of Toronto, you will vote for one candidate for mayor, one candidate for councillor, and one is elected in each of the 25 city wards. And if you are eligible, you will vote for one candidate for school board trustee. As mentioned before, there are 4 different kinds of school boards: English public, English Catholic, French public, and French Catholic. You may only vote for one kind of school board. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or as we call it, MPAC, keeps a provincial record of school support. So if you want to change your school support, you must contact MPAC. Next slide, please. During non-elections years, if you're unsure if you're on the voters list or if you have moved since the last election and would like to update your information, you should contact MPAC directly or visit Voter Lookup. During a municipal election year, after September 1st, the City of Toronto manages the voters list and is able to update information and add individuals to the list. During this time, you will be able to check if you're on the voters list and make changes directly through the online tool MyVote, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. It is important to be on the voters list to ensure that you receive your voter information card. However, even if you're not on the list, you can still vote. You'll need to fill out a form at your voting place on election day. Being on the list helps speed up your time spent in the voting place, and you're more than likely to receive your voter information card. So I'm just going to add a little bit to this sort of ad lib on my notes here. Just the date has actually passed for updating your information now on our online tool, but that doesn't mean that you can't vote. You can still go into the polling place and make a declaration there, sign a form, and you'll still be able to vote. So the fact that if you're not on the voters list, it's not the end of the world. It just makes things a little quicker when you get there. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. And you can still use the tool MyVote, which I'll show you in the video a little bit later. Okay, now we're going to talk about identification. When you arrive to vote in person, you must show identification to prove that you are the person whose name appears on the voters list. The identification must show your name and qualifying Toronto address. Photo identification is not required. Some examples of identification include Ontario driver's license and Ontario health card if your name and address are printed on the card, mortgage, lease or rental agreement, insurance policy, credit card statement, a bill for hydro, water, gas, telephone, internet. And remember that a Canadian passport is not an acceptable identification document, and that's because you write your address inside the passport yourself. You can find a full list of this online at toronto.ca/elections, as I will be saying many times during this. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment to see if anybody has any questions so far about, who we're voting for and, how to qualify to vote, identification, that type of thing. So if anybody's got any questions, you can put them in the chat. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions in the chat, so I will move on. Sorry, just one moment. Okay, great. So how to vote. So this is what to expect in a perfect world when you go into the polling station. First, you'll show your identification and voter information card. Then your name will be crossed off the voters list. You will then be given a ballot and secrecy folder. You'll mark your ballot behind the privacy screen by filling in the oval to the right of the candidate's name of your choice. Place your marked ballot back in the secrecy folder and give it to the election official. The election official will then feed your ballot into the tabulator, and once accepted, you have successfully voted. One thing I do want to point out here is a lot of the times people assume it's going to be a cross in a box, because most elections are. This one is an oval that you have to fill in. So that's just something to note, because the reason we do that is because it's easier for our machines to read. So when you're speaking to people about elections, you can always mention that as well, just so people have got it on their radars before they go in. Okay, next slide, please. Additional voting options in the VAT. Mail-in voting will be available this year. So we've the applications for mail-in voting have closed. They closed on Friday, But in case anybody here, or in case you're speaking to anybody who did apply for a mail-in vote, I am going to speak a little bit to the mail-in vote piece, because if they've applied for a mail-in vote, then they may have questions about what it's going to look like when they receive their mail-in ballot and that type of thing. So I've got a video to show you so you can get a visual of what that will look like. Another thing you can do is appoint a proxy voter. So a proxy voter must be somebody who is an eligible elector in the City of Toronto. A person may act as a voting proxy for one person who is not a family member, or may vote on behalf of any or all immediate family members. Immediate family members can be a spouse, sibling, parent, child, grandparent, or grandchild. You also have the option of curbside voting. So if you are physically unable to go inside the voting place, you can request to have your ballot brought to your vehicle outside of the building or to another area within the voting place. A friend or support person will need to go inside the voting place to let the election officials know that you require curbside voting. So that's an option. Assistance in the voting place. If you require assistance at the voting place, you may bring a friend along to help, or you may ask an election official for assistance. Your friend may go behind the voting screen with you, however, they must make an oral declaration first. Translated materials and language services. If an elector requires assistance in a language other than English, key election information is available in other languages on the Toronto Elections website in October of an election year. If an elector requires assistance in a language that is not listed on the website, they may call 311 for greater access to over-the-phone interpretation in more than 180 languages. This is also an option on election day in the polling place. So if somebody is struggling, that English is not their first language, they can call 311 for translation services while they vote. Advanced vote. So advanced voting days will run from October 7th to 14th. There will be 2 advanced vote locations per ward. Voter Assist Terminal, or the VAT. One of our key initiatives is the availability of the Voter Assist Terminal, which allows electors with disabilities to vote privately and independently. The features include a touchscreen, an audio function, a braille keypad, a sip and puff tube device, a rocker paddle and foot switch, zoom features to adjust font sizes and color contrast. There will be a VAT at each of the 50 advanced vote locations. On election day, there will be a VAT located in 2 voting places in each of the 25 wards. If one is not located at your designated voting location, you can request to have your ballot transferred by calling 311. To learn more about the VAT and to view a video, you can go to toronto.ca/elections. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, mail-in voting. So I'm just going to briefly go over this. Starting September 1st, so between September 1st and September 23rd were the application dates. But now the application has ended. All of the packages will be sent out to those who have applied for them. And what people need to do is sign a declaration form, mark their ballot, insert the sealed secrecy envelope into the yellow return envelope, and then return their mail-in package. And they can do that at any of the yellow drop boxes as pictured here. Oh, actually, you've got a version without the picture. I have a picture of mine. There's yellow drop boxes, they're very clearly marked, or you can drop your mail-in voting package into any Canada Post drop box. So that will come back to us that way. Okay, next slide, please. I believe is our video. Yep. So this is just a video to explain the mail-in voting process.
For the October 24th municipal election, eligible voters will be able to choose an alternative to in-person voting. Applications to vote by mail are accepted beginning September 1st, and the deadline to apply is Friday, September 23rd at 4:30 p.m. If you're applying to vote by mail in this year's election, visit toronto.ca/vote-by-mail, which can be found on the Toronto Elections web pages. Use My Vote to fill in your information to receive your mail-in voting package. Don't forget your confirmation code. If you're an eligible voter, you will receive your mail-in voting package by mail. It is important to remember Toronto Elections must receive completed packages by October 21st at noon. Now let's see what's inside. The mail-in voting package will include a declaration form which must be signed in order for your vote to count, an official ballot, a ballot secrecy envelope, a yellow return envelope with prepaid postage. Now that you have all your forms, let's complete the package. Sign the declaration form and add it to the yellow return envelope. Mark the ballot by using only a black or blue pen and insert it into the secrecy envelope. Insert the sealed secrecy envelope into the yellow return envelope, and if it's required, place a photocopy of your identification in the yellow return envelope. Now seal that envelope. Hold tight, you're almost there. It's the final step. It's time to mail your package. Take your package to any Canada Post mailbox or deliver it to one of the yellow Toronto Elections drop boxes. The yellow drop boxes are available starting October 7th. Each ward will have one drop box. Locations are listed at toronto.ca/vote-by-mail. Remember, your completed mail-in voting package must be received by noon on Friday, October 21st. After you have mailed your package, wait a few days, and then you can visit toronto.ca/vote-by-mail to check the status of your package. If you're interested in applying to vote by mail, applications start September 1st and end September 23rd at 4:30 p.m.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so My Vote. My Vote is an online tool that has been developed to help electors find information they need to know about voting in the City of Toronto. And during an election period, you can use My Vote to view key information specific to you, the voter, and it's easy to use. It is optimized for use on mobile devices and computers. So simply enter your Toronto address and you can change or check or add your information to the voters list, find out where and when you go to vote, view your information card, see the list of candidates running, and find accessibility information about your voting place and more. We have another video to show you about that.
Hello, let's take a look at My Vote, the web application that has everything you need to prepare for Toronto's municipal election this October. Using My Vote can make your voting experience easier. The app allows you to find all the important information you need to vote in this municipal election. To start, go to toronto.ca/myvote. Then type your address until the drop-down menu appears. Select your address from that list and press Go. Now that you're logged in, you will see a My Voter Information tab. This is where you can check, add, or update your voters list information. A My Candidates tab. This is where you'll find the candidates who are running in your ward. A My Ward Map tab. This is where you can see a map of your voting ward. That's not all My Vote has to offer. You can use the app to apply for mail-in voting. Just go to the My Vote home screen and click the Apply to Vote by Mail link. Finally, at the beginning of October, My Vote will add features like find where you go to vote during advance vote or on election day, view a sample ballot, download or print your voter information card. Avoid delays and use My Vote to make sure you're on the voters list. You can only add or update your information on My Vote until September 23rd. After September 23rd, you can add or update your information when you go to vote in person. You can use My Vote and all its features up to and during Election Day, October 24th. For example, starting October 3rd, download your voter information card and use it on your smartphone when you go to vote. My Vote can be easily accessed by using either a computer, tablet, or smartphone. And remember to check My Vote before you go to vote, as voting locations are subject to change. To learn more and start using My Vote today, go to toronto.ca/myvote.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I see that we have a question in the chat, which is, what if you do not have identification? So if you do not have the identification, our staff are trained in the polling place that if you don't have identification, you just need to make a declaration that you are who you say you are. So it is possible to vote without identification. Before we move on to participate, does anybody else have any other questions while we're still in this section about voting specifically? Okay, doesn't look like we do have any questions. So I will move on. Okay, great, participate. So our final section is on how you can get involved in municipal elections. So next slide, please. You can run as a candidate, register as a third-party advertiser, work the election, or share information with your community. Next slide, please. So we're not going to go over running as a candidate or registering as a third-party advertiser, just because at this point in the election cycle, those things are now, well, obviously the candidates have now been nominated, and the third-party advertising, is winding down. So we'll move straight on to working the election. So for every election, the City of Toronto hires people to work in voting places across the city. This is a great way to participate in the democratic process. You do not have to be a Canadian citizen to work an election. There are many roles available and everyone is encouraged to apply. This year, recruitment began in July. Job descriptions are available on the Toronto Elections website. A few examples of the types of jobs you might be hired for are ballot officer, which is the person who strikes your name off the voters list and hands the voter a ballot. Customer service officer, who greets voters when they arrive and directs them to the correct lineup. Revising officer, this is the person who makes changes to the voters lists and adds individuals. Tabulator officer, they feed the ballots into the tabulator. And voter assist terminal officer, they assist voters with using this device. During the hiring process, applications can be submitted online. Next slide, please. So share information with your community was the last suggested thing on that list. So what you can do is you already have this presentation. So this presentation is made to be shared. So you can share this you can give this presentation yourself. You can share it with your communities. You can use it in whatever way you wish to get that information out there. It really is, it's got all of the notes in it. It's really made to be shared and disseminated throughout communities across Toronto. So please do that. You can invite Toronto Elections to your events like we've been invited today. And we also go do similar things to the Democratic Engagement Exchange, where they do we can also do mock vote, like a pop-up election. We also do just tabling at events, sharing information. So if you have any community events coming up, you can invite Toronto Elections. And you can also join the Elections Outreach Network. The Elections Outreach Network is a group of people that gets together representing different community organizations. And we talk about barriers to voting, anything new that's coming up. We meet quarterly all together in election off years, and during election years, we split it up into three. So one focusing on accessibility, one focusing on youth, and one general meeting. So that's also something you can join. Next slide, please. Just some elections key dates for you. So May 2nd to August 19th was the nomination period for the people running in the election. Employment opportunities run from July right up until election day. So there is still time to apply to vote, to work at the election. Third-party advertiser registration runs up to October 21st. Voters list registration has now closed. That went up until 23rd, as well as mail-in voting. But as mentioned before, if you're not on the voters list, you can still go in to vote. You just need to go in there and sign a form and make a declaration. Advanced vote is October 7th, 14th. Election day, the big day, is October 24th. And my final slide is just some contact information and some more information about local government in general. If you would find, you can go onto the website or follow us on social media to find more information about local government in general. So that's it from me. Does anybody have any questions? What qualifications are needed to work the elections? So you really just need to be somebody who can provide great customer service and somebody who is eligible to work in Canada. So, and over the age of 18 years old. So you don't need to be an eligible elector. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen, but you do have to be over 18 and eligible to work in Canada. And the application process is about a 20-minute application where you can mostly just put down your contact information, and then you have immediately you'll schedule an interview and have a 15-minute interview with a recruiter who will talk to you about where best to place you. Any other questions? Yes, Melissa.
Wanted to ask if what happens if you run into any problems on election day and can't, whether it be your can't get your information validated at a polling station, or you have trouble accessing it, voter assist terminals. What is your recourse for action on election day?
So we have a lot of people on hand on election day. So, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that people can vote. So without going too much into the weeds of how we organize things, we essentially have several stations across the city, and we do encourage people to use advance vote as much as they can, just because that's 10 days of voting days. And if you, so you can, I'm planning to use, obviously, because I'm going to be working, but I'm planning to use the advance vote just because I know, for example, one of the things that's going to definitely come up is that October 24th actually happens to be Diwali this year. So some people might not be able to get to their polling place in time if they're very busy that day. So I do encourage people generally to use the advance vote days as much as they can. But we have various what we call election centrals across the city. So those election centrals will be in charge of several polling stations around them, and any issues that we have at the polling station that the polling station staff aren't able to solve, they call it into us at the election central, and then election central is staffed with experts in each of those areas. So whether it be candidates, whether it be I can't think of all of the people, technology that's not working. We have experts stationed in every single election central location to be able to be deployed or to solve those issues. So while we really don't have much of an option if somebody just can't make it to the polling station for whatever reason, at a certain point you have to get a lift or try your best to get there. We do have a lot of measures in place that if something goes wrong in the polling place, there are ways to resolve it. And anybody that is in the queue to vote, just this is something before I go on to the next question, anybody who's in the lineup to vote at close of poll will still be able to vote. So I know that some people have been in the lineup before the polls are closed and they've been told to go away. That doesn't happen in our election. If you're in the lineup, then you still get to vote. So even if you end up voting a few minutes past close of poll, because you're in the lineup when the poll closed, you'll still be able to vote. Okay, Israt.
People vote in this election for their ward councillor. What if they don't have any permanent address? Why do they vote?
Okay, so if somebody doesn't have a permanent address, what we're doing this year is, and they do it every year, every election year, is we are sending out posters and postcards to all of the drop-in centres, respite centres and shelters across the city with polling place information. So whatever polling place is closest to that drop-in center, respite center, or shelter will be listed on that poster, and people without a permanent address can go into a polling place, any polling place in the city, and say, you know, I don't have a fixed address, and I would like to vote. And in that situation, our staff are trained on what to do. Again, they just need to make a declaration and sign a form, and then they'll be issued with a ballot and they'll be able to vote. So generally, we consider the wherever they spend most of their time, this person, that will be where their voting location will be.
Thanks, Alex. That was excellent. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Feel free to pop them into the chat or put your hand up or unmute. I do have another question. I know, we have Ishrat and then Rifat. Rifat, do you want to go first?
Yes. I was just thinking that you are saying that if a person don't have the permanent address, but the condition for vote to cast the vote is should be a Canadian citizen. Any Canadian citizen have no address? Is it possible?
So if a Canadian citizen doesn't have an address, they can still vote, yes.
Yes, but how come if some person is Canadian citizen, he's not in the shelter and there, I don't know. Is it possible? Yes?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, so
Rifat, I think that, so go ahead.
Oh, I'm just to, so if a Canadian citizen doesn't have a permanent address, they can literally walk in off the street into a polling place and say, I don't have a permanent address. I spend most of my time, I don't know, in this park down the road, and we can register them to that park. So literally somebody can walk in off the street and say, I'm a Canadian citizen. I don't have a permanent address, but I would like to vote. And we will make that happen.
Great question, Rifat. Thank you so much. Ishrat, do you want to go ahead?
My question is about curbside voting. Is it available only on election day or during advance voting as well?
It's available during advance vote as well. Yeah.
Right. I wasn't sure of that.
Yeah.
And Alex, how would you recommend is the best way to get the word out about the elections and to encourage people to vote in the advance polls?
Honestly, it's not easy, believe me, because most of my job so far has been, did you know there's an election coming? Is there? Didn't we just have one? Has been pretty much most of the conversations I've had. So there hasn't been, and because it's quite a quiet year this year in terms of candidates. So I would love to say that it would be an easy job for you all to get people excited and motivated for this election, but really it is just having those conversations, reminding people, because municipal elections don't tend to be much of a priority for people in comparison to the federal and the provincial levels. And so I think really just speaking to people about what it is that the municipal government is and how that really does affect their daily lives. And that's why it is important for them to be voting, right? So I think, a lot of our kind of daily irritants, of this isn't working for me, or why is this the way that it is oftentimes something that's dealt with at the municipal level. So really kind of thinking about what's important to a community and what they, what affects them on a day-to-day basis is the best way that we found to engage with people.
Rifat, do you want to go ahead? Thank you, Alex. That was really helpful. Oh, you're muted, Rifat.
Yes. My question is this, the candidates who were in the election, every time, we get some flyers, some big card, but this time is not coming. It is good that we are not using so much paper, but some people who don't access the computer, how can they get these information?
So we are sending out the voter information card this year. So it just hasn't arrived yet. So that will be sent out early this week. And once those have been all sent out, even if somebody doesn't have a voter information card, they can still find that information out by calling us if they want to. We have people on the phones, like a lot of people on the phones. So yeah, we're always available to take those kinds of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions coming from the audience? So, Alex, we do have a number of resident leaders and organizations joining us today that are engaged in voter engagement. What are the key points from your presentation that you think you would want people to take back to their communities and the groups and residents that they work with?
Yeah. Okay. The first thing I think would be about just being prepared to go and vote. So making sure that they have everything that they need, remembering that it doesn't need to be a photo ID. Another thing is to remember that these elections are going to have 3 different lists of people on them. That's the list for the people who are running for mayor, the list of people running for councillor, and list of school board trustees. And also, none of those people will be associated with a political party. All of those people will be representing themselves and running as independents. So it's very important that people do their research on their candidates. I would say that those are the key points. Those are the things that people tend to miss a lot of the time. So those are the key points, yeah.
Thanks so much. And I'll just throw it back to the audience in case there are any other questions. If there aren't, then we might wrap it up shortly. I really appreciate all of your time today, Alex. I think at Social Planning Toronto, we also have a similar goal of trying to promote engagement in the election. We see the city services as one of those areas that really touches every part of your life, and really affects areas around equity and social justice. When it comes to affordable housing, poverty reduction, transit, community services, these are areas of this within the purview of city council that we really want people to be engaged and know how it's affecting. So I really appreciate your time today. There's another question that came up through the chat. It's are there any COVID precautions or restrictions required at polling stations?
So currently we're just working within whatever the government mandates are. So if there's a surge in cases, then we will pivot accordingly. And but currently we don't have any special additional measures in place. But we're ready to go because we already did it once in the by-election.
Great. We hope that that won't happen, but it's great to be prepared. Sojin, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I want to ask if we want to have the same, workshop, in the community, right? But we need to translate, into our, community language, right? If there are some resource, translation we can use, or we need to translate it by ourselves, and, to the community.
Yeah, we don't have this translated, so it would be something that you would need to translate yourself.
So we need to learn that, right? And then can we use the same, the PPT, or are you going to, share the PPT with us? And if there are some template, we can, make the translation. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, so we have already shared this PowerPoint with Melissa. So it will, if Melissa's happy to share that, I can also share it again. If Melissa's happy to share that, then yeah, it can be shared. And we've designed this so that people can take it and use it in their communities in the way that they best see fit. So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Thank
So
you.
Jen, we will share out a copy of the presentation with everybody that attends.
Thank you. And this presentation, can we add it? Can we write in? I mean,
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Alex, I didn't attend the last on September 20th. Is it possible to send us this presentation on September 20th? Because it was also a good topic, election engagement.
Okay, I don't remember September 20th. I've got to say it's
So-
been a wild one. I don't remember if we did one.
Rifat, we had a different presenter, and we will share out the slides from that. It was on accessible voting and voter different voting options. So we'll share that out. We are going to post both today's event and September 19th event or September 20th event on our YouTube channel. So once those links are up, we'll also share those with you, but we can share out the PowerPoint from the previous presentation as well.
Thank you so much. So nice of you for this information. So, thank you for your cooperation. Thanks. It's a wonderful.
This is
Any other
Jason.
questions?
May I ask another question? If we want to have the English workshop, could we invite Alex, to have the, or someone else from, Social Planning Toronto to help us, present, in the workshop?
Oops. I'm just going to put my email in the chat so everybody can see it. Because, yeah, of course, we would be happy to do the presentation for whoever would like it. So I put my email in the chat, and you can get in touch with me directly if you would like to invite one of our team members to come and do the presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. That was excellent. Before we close off, are there any other questions for Alex? That's great. Alex, we really appreciate you joining us today. It was a very informative presentation, and we really appreciate you answering all of our questions today.